America, bonjour, hi, Canada. Greeting to my listeners in Israel and around the world. I'm Hugh Hewitt. There's a lot of news to get to. I will get to all of that news today, especially in Israel. I will cover the Fed cuts. I'll cover the economy. Like I do every day, we're a breaking news show. If anything happens, I tell you about it. But voting began in Pennsylvania this week. And on Saturday, it begins in Virginia. So I have written a column over at foxnews.com, and I'm making this monologue, which we'll put over at my YouTube channel, so that you can have in one place something to remind yourself as to why to vote for Donald Trump and Senator Vance. The former president is going to get my vote in Virginia as soon as I get to the in-person voting, which begins on Saturday morning, and I hope that you will do the same. I put all of the arguments in one place. Now, I know the odds favor the former president if you believe in Nate Silver. He's got him up 60% odds of winning, 40% odds of Kamala Harris. If you look at the national polls, Harris has got a slight lead. If you look at the state polls, they're tied. And if you look at the internal, Donald Trump's doing very well. The new Gallup poll is a stunner. The unfavorable rating among independents for Kamala Harris is 60%. She can't win with that number, and Gallup, of course, is the gold standard. So I made all my arguments against the backdrop of a pretty good feeling among Trump supporters, but it's going to be a roller coaster. It always is. I've done this many times. My first vote was in 1976, and believe me, there are very few blowouts. Very, very few blowouts, and when they occur, you don't even know that they're going to occur, with the exception of 2008, when we all knew that President Obama was going to become President Obama. They don't look like a blowout until the day after. So I wanted all of the arguments. You have to persuade people, not just tell them vote for X or vote for Y. I want to persuade you why you should vote for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And it really begins. And my emphasis is on, in my column, the fact that you don't only elect Donald Trump and J.D. Vance or Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you elect 3,000 people. The most important of those 3,000 people, they're political appointees. They bring 3,000 people with them. The most important of those people are the national security team. Right now it's Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan, and they've been a disaster for the world. It's going to be, if it's Donald Trump, we know what his national security team was at the end of his first term. It was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor Robert C. O'Brien, Director of National Intelligence John Radcliffe. Rick Grinnell had been there almost the entire time. He left at the end of the administration to go over and work on the Trump campaign, but serious people doing serious things. He didn't always hit a home run, but he batted over 600 when it came to appointees. We don't know anything about Kamala Harris's national security people, except her national security advisor to the vice president, a man named Philip Gordon, about whom I've heard very troubling things. But what about those 3,000 people? Those 3,000 people go into the federal agencies. There are 160 federal agencies. Most of those 3,000 people do not go through advice and consent. Now, I've held jobs in the federal government in the Reagan administration. I was a wet behind the kids lawyer coming off of the D.C. Circuit, and I went into the DOJ as a political appointee for both William French Smith and Ed Meese. Then I went to the White House counsel's office for Fred Fielding and Richard Hauser. Then I went over to NEH. Then I went to OPM as their general counsel. Big agency, 6,000 people. Then I got nominated for and confirmed by the Senate as the deputy director of the Office of Personnel Management. I ended up as the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. Those last two jobs are the 7 I held in the executive branch. My clerkship on the D.C. Circuit doesn't count. That's the judicial branch. Those 7 jobs in the executive branch, 5 didn't require anybody's okay except President Reagan and his personnel department. 2 of them required that I have gone through Senate advice and consent. It's very few people that get a check on them. So Donald Trump gets to bring his 3,000 people. We know who they are. Kamala Harris gets to bring 3,000 people too. She is a radical from the San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley world that is insular And to call it deep blue is to not fully communicate how radical that environment is. That's what you need to focus on. That and some issues. Right? She's going to bring 3,000 radicals to Washington, D.C. from San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley, and some from Hollywood, where she's living now. Radical. And they're going to do radical things. They're going to drive the country far to the left. The policies are also very different. Beginning with taxes. Donald Trump wants to extend and revise the tax code of 2017. He wants to add no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. He wants to restore the state and local income tax and property tax deduction, which, by the way, I think is a good thing. Some Republicans don't. I had that argument and lost it when the tax bill was undergoing its development with Kevin Brady as chairman of Ways and Means. I thought it was wrong to take that away. And I'm glad Trump has changed his mind on that. But my choice for Trump is primarily driven by my faith in the Constitution of the United States and my deep unwillingness to see it amended and the rule of law upended by mysterious legislation to somehow reform the court. It's just court packing. FDR tried it in 1937, and it blew up in his hands because Americans don't want to change the rule of law. And I don't want an amendment to the Constitution about the court, but mostly I do not want them to pack the court. That's the rapid end of the rule of law in the United States if that happens. It would change the separation of powers. It would change everything. Now, my knowledge base is not just my time in the Reagan administration. I dealt with the federal government for all the years I practiced law, from 1989 until I retired in 2016, all the years I've taught at Chapman Law School's Fowler School of Law since 1996, all my years in journalism beginning in 1990 on KFI Radio, 10 years with PBS, 25 years with Salem, this studio, this radio show, this television show on the Salem News Channel. It's all experience. I read, I talk. It's what I like to do. It's why I do the news. And when I come up to, I'm very serious about the future. And I'm 68. I'm worried about my 3 children, their 3 spouses, my 6 grandchildren. I am worried about the Chinese communist Xi Jinping. I'm worried about Putin. Really worried about Iran, even though Hezbollah, its puppet in Lebanon, took a couple of body blows this week with exploding pagers and exploding handheld radios. Who knows what else they're going to be able to explain. The bad guys are reeling as Israel takes them on, in the same way that the United States took a long time to go from being surprised at Pearl Harbor to the first battle at Guadalcanal, until the war actually turned the Pacific at Midway. Long time for us to get to North Africa, longer to get to Italy, longer to get to D-Day. It takes a long time. These wars go on. But we can win. The West can stay free and healthy and productive. We can win the artificial intelligence race, the supercomputing race, if we get energy, domestic energy production. Not only natural fossil fuels, liquefied natural gas, oil. We got to build nuclear plants, or we're not going to win the AI battle. Trump believes in growth. He ought to combine a bunch of agencies into the Agency for Growth and Stewardship. Department of Interior, Department of Energy, EPA. Put them all together. Bring in the Forest Service from the Department of Agriculture. Put Doug Burgum, if you heard him on the show yesterday, put him in charge of it. But the very important thing I want you to know is the quality of the people and how much everything changes with every administration. Everything changes. And the president, you see him on TV, you see her on TV. I don't know if it's going to be Trump. I don't know if it's going to be Harris. I don't think we will recover the lost lead with the People's Republic of China and Xi Jinping and the CCP if Kamala Harris wins. She's not a communist agent. She's a radical. She will cut defense spending. I don't know what we're supposed to deter China with if she wins. But I've just got to say, when you have someone like Trump, who's basically apolitical, he's running on a moderate agenda. He doesn't want an abortion ban. He doesn't want any of the nutty stuff the Democrats are saying he wants. That's just campaigning. He wants to bring basically moderates and conservatives, those 3,000 people, will be very mainstream, from Goldwater Republicans to Rockefeller Republicans, everyone in between, and a few Democrats, like he had Peter Navarro. Hope they don't have Peter Navarro in the second term. He was a Democrat. But who do our enemies fear? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Key question. They do not fear Kamala Harris. They will roll on. China will roll on into Taiwan, into the outer Philippine Islands. And we know as well that Russia will not be deterred. We know Iran will not be deterred. Our ally Israel will be in danger. Now, you didn't get any of this in the very, very biased ABC News debate, but I've laid it out paragraph after paragraph in my new column, which you can get at my X account, or you can watch this again at YouTube. But I encourage you, please, send this video, send the column to all your friends and family. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, has to win. Stay tuned.